The Buffalo Sabres begin their season in just a couple nights from now. And consider this your Talking Buffalo Sabres preview. Also going to be talking Buffalo Bills today. Welcome to Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. I am Patrick Moran. Thank you as always for locking in, whether you're watching this, whether you're listening to this on the audio side. I appreciate you all. Kind of like a mini residency I've had going on with Joe Yerdon here over the last few weeks. He's been joining me for these Tuesday shows, getting ready to get this season started. Of course, Joe, author and creator of Noted Hockey, co-host of the Maintenance Day podcast alongside Lance Lazowski. Bleacher Report. I could keep going on and on and on. But anyway, good time for you. Obviously, an exciting time. The season's about to get cooking. First of all, how you doing? And secondly, we're going to save the Sabres talk for a few minutes because I also want to talk a little bit of football. But what's going on, buddy? How you doing, man? This is a big week.
It is. It's a huge week. I'm doing good. It's been fun. It's been, business is picking up, so that's good. Finally are done with the stinking preseason games. Jesus, watching that one the other night, I was like, I don't care, man. Like the results don't matter. Just nobody get hurt. And, Penguins played it like it was that kid in gym class that tries too hard. Picture 20 of them going up against the Sabres being like, hey man, like we don't have another game for a week, bro. Like just chill out. Penguins are like, we have a game in 4 days. Go to hell. So, it was like one of those nights. And all of us are just like, is this done? Can we just be done? So now it is done. So now we got regular season coming. So it's we're good. We're pumped up.
And I got to be honest with you, man. I am very much excited. I was borderline excited last year. I'm pretty much I'm all in excited for this season. We're going to talk Sabres here in just a few minutes. A lot to get to. Like I said, kind of a Sabres season preview. I know you're going to be doing something with Lance. I'm sure that'll be really cool this week. For that, though, you know what? Even before we get to the Bills, people who, every now and then, Joe, we get some new followers, new subscribers. People are new to this podcast. So you might have done the show with me a million times, but for some people, this may be their first. So I feel like a broken record by saying this.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm going to say it again. Joe Yerdon is a Buffalo Bills watcher. He's not a Buffalo Bills fan. So when I talk to him about the Bills, he's going to give me objective, honest opinions, not necessarily slanted towards the opinion of a fan. And of course, on the hockey side, you quite literally cover the team. So that goes without saying. But what you are, let's start here, man. I'll spend at least even just 2-3 minutes talking about this topic right now. What you are a fan of are the Detroit Lions. And I'm going to tell you, man, this team, and I've been telling you this before the season started, dude, this team is good. They are 4-1. And to me, in my opinion, Joe, right now, I think they clearly are the third best team in the NFC. I mean, you got to go. I think you got to go Frisco, and I think you got to go Philly, 1 or 2, whatever way you want to put that. But I'm telling you, man, I think Detroit might be the third best team in the NFC. In fact, I'm pretty confident that they are top to bottom, a really good roster. And I mean, they rolled Carolina on Sunday, and this is your team, man. So I'm gonna throw some flowers your way right off the bat. They're fun. I like where the Detroit Lions are at. I would even argue that are they better than the Buffalo Bills on paper? No, but I would argue that I would argue that maybe right now, and I have to put money on one of these two teams going further, it might be Detroit, man. I know it's got to be a good time for you, man, with them.
It's an adjustment period is what it is. Because even last season, like they were so fun at the end of last season, but remember they started 1-7 last year. Like that kind of kneecapped any sort of joy that you could take away from it. Because it's like, they're playing awesome, but boy, they stunk up the house the first half of the season. They could have been rolling into the playoffs, but they didn't. But lesson learned. They're fun as hell to watch, man. I think I said I was talking with Paul Hamilton today about football because he was remarking over one of the trick plays that they ran in the game against Carolina, talking about that one. And I go, Paul, the biggest thing for me is that they're enjoyable to watch. It's like they can lose games and like that would drive me crazy, but they're fun. Like they're not grinding games out, boring style. They're just kind of going about their business, and they pull a rabbit out of their hat every 10 plays or so. And you're like, how'd that come from? Like, okay. But I mean, yesterday's game was like a circus. I mean, you had Hutchinson intercepting a screen pass.
Yeah.
First off, like just one hand catching a screen pass, breaking through the line. Like, okay.
My preseason defensive MVP pick, by the way. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, looking pretty good right now. I'll say that he's been awesome. The play Paul and I got talking about was the trick play where they were running. I forget what down it was, but Goff is standing on, stand under center, but like standing there, like just pointing out, doing all this, but he's standing there really wide, which looks kind of weird. Because you're like, well, that's a little weird. Next thing you know, they snapped it right back to Montgomery, and Montgomery takes off up the left side for 10 yards and gets a first down out of it. And everybody's like, the hell's that play? And I'm like, who cares what it was? That was awesome is what it was. And then for what, the second time in 4 weeks, they've done a flea flicker that went for a touchdown. This one was a wide receiver reverse like to Goff for a touchdown. Like, what? Like, okay. Like, listen. It's nice to have a team that's fun to watch. Bills fans can identify with this greatly because, for so long they were just a joyless husk to watch march up and down the field. But I mean, geez, as crazy as the Seattle loss left me, like they're fun as hell to watch. And like, they crushed Carolina. Like that's not even a close game. And they're taking care of business. And it's weird to say, it's weird to point it out, but they look damn good. And it just kind of stinks seeing the Eagles being 5-0 and the Niners are 5-0. And you're like, well, whatever, take care of your own business, win the division and see where it goes from there.
Sure. Would it be fair to say two different sports, but kind of the same? Because Detroit was fun last year. Didn't make the playoffs though. The Buffalo Sabres were fun. The Buffalo missed. The Buffalo Sabres were fun last year. Didn't make the playoffs. Just missed. Fun to watch. Kind of like a parallel between those two teams, the Detroit Lions and the Buffalo Sabres right now. I kind of sense that a little bit.
Yeah. It's weird to have, my chocolate mixed with my peanut butter like that. It's very funny, but it feels like it's prepared me for what it's like to keep up with the Sabres team. Like watching the Sabres do what they did last year, where it was just a scoring bonanza all the time. And yeah, there was frustrations and, bad losing streaks and whatnot, but it came down to it. They were playing pretty well. End of the season, they pushed. I mean, they looked like they were going to limp into the last few weeks of the season, and then nope, snapped out of it. Devin Levi showed up as the thing, and then suddenly it was like, oh wait, we might be able to get in the playoffs here. Let's do this, and you can go back and nitpick different games and say, well, I should have won this one, should have won that. I was doing the same damn thing with the Lions last year, and fortunately, all it took was one game for me to go back to, and it was them losing to Seattle, who beat them out in the tiebreaker to get into the play. Like, it was easy. Just if you beat Seattle in week 4, you win. Like, whatever. That's why I'm extra annoyed that they lost to them again this year. I'm like, no, take it out on them, man. Like they went into the playoffs and stunk ass, and everybody's like, boy, I wish Detroit was here. And then they weren't. Everybody was like, boy, these playoffs kind of suck. Yeah. The fun team wasn't there. Like Sabres, I mean, listen, the Panthers went on a crazy run in the Stanley, to the Stanley Cup final last year. So you couldn't really say the same thing with the Stanley Cup playoffs, but still, imagine how much more fun it would have been to have, Florida, or Buffalo, Toronto, or Buffalo, Boston in the first round.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. And the fun thing about Detroit this past week, and granted, they were playing Carolina, but still at the end of the day, no Armand St. Brown, their best receiver by far. No Jameer Gibbs. Jamison Williams was on like a pitch count in his first game back, and it was like, no problem.
3 targets, man. I think I saw like 2 catches for like 6 yards or something.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. They're fun to watch, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm rooting for the Lions too. I told you, they're kind of like become like my de facto NFC team.
It's like a Great Lakes alliance with with Buffalo and Cleveland kind of ruined it by getting Watson. So like they're kind of thrown out of it, but. And it helps that they're in the other conference. So it's kind of like you can feel good about rooting for them. It's just, when they face each other, if they ever face each other, it's like, well, we know where our loyalties lie here, but kind of cool to see them be fun. Kind of be cool to see them make the playoffs and maybe get hot. Who knows? Because there's a lot of NFC teams that just suck ass out loud. And you're just like, boy, I hope they don't do anything. they don't do anything. Watching San Francisco punk out Dallas Sunday night was pretty good because Dallas is cover your ears, Pat. Dallas, the Cowboys are the Notre Dame of the NFL because it's all hype. It's all people pumping their tires
That's
for
fair.
no reason, and then they lose to Louisville. Like that's how it goes.
I hate the comparison. I hate you saying that, but I admit that you're 100% right, man. That is what it is. Anyway, long as injuries don't send the Lions, off the rails, I think they're good. And that kind of is a segue before we talk Sabres. I want to talk Buffalo Bills here for a handful of minutes as well. We'll get to the season, like potential season derailing injuries here in a few.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start with a complaint. And I think this is warranted. No, I do think this is warranted, man. And listen, I fucking hate more than anything in the world excuse makers. And there's always a reason when the Bills lose, the league's against them, blah, blah, blah. The officials suck. Just go on and on and on and blah, 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 blah. But I'm going to tell you, this whole London thing was wrong. And let me put up a quote. This is not a Buffalo Bill complaining. This is not a shithead podcaster like me or an angry, unreasonable Bills fan complaining, man. This was the star of the football game on Sunday. Travis Etienne speaking to the media, to Pro Football Talk after the game in the locker room. This is what he said, straight up, word for word. I felt like it really created a great edge for us. Running back Travis Etienne told Pro Football Talk. Just knowing how I felt last Sunday in the Falcons game. The first game that we had out here and having the whole week out here, just being able to get our bodies adjusted and not having to have that jet lag on us throughout the game, I felt like it played a huge part. So that's the Jacksonville running backs talking about what an advantage it was for Jacksonville to be there all week, having their legs under them, while the Bills, which in hindsight was a terrible decision, I think, to fly out, wait till Friday morning. In fact, Baltimore's playing in London this week. They're leaving on Monday as we're recording this.
Yeah.
They're already headed out to London. I think the Bills should have did that in hindsight. That said, regardless, he talked about that Atlanta game because Jacksonville's been there. And they're the first team ever to play in London back-to-back weeks, by the way. He talked about the difference in how he felt or how they felt physically that first week as opposed to the second week. So that's kind of where I want to start this is I think it is a legitimate gripe right now that the Bills have with the NFL. And I don't think you're going to see this again going forward either, because this was a legitimate, straight up competitive advantage to Jacksonville. I'm not saying it's the only reason why the Bills lost the game, because then that would just be, making sure that they don't have any accountability. They have plenty of accountability, but this is a very valid, in my opinion, excuse. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely odd seeing that they were playing back-to-back weeks. I'm like, well, that's an advantage because that just flying over there is a big adjustment. It's
sure.
There's the time difference because what is it, 5-6 hours?
6 hours, 5 to 6 hours. It's one of the two.
Yeah, it depends on what our stupid clocks are doing, but it's definitely a change, and it's comparable to if an East team was going to fly to the West Coast 2 weeks in a row. Because then you got to decide, like, well, we're just staying out there. We got to go home. Like, how you got to do this? Because you're just thinking, like, well, it's coast to coast is easier. It's definitely harder going out to England. And but I look at it this way: it's not the first time the Bills have been there either. But it is an advantage for the team that's been there for 2 weeks now. I think I heard a story that because the Bills were the home team, they got to pick where they stayed in London.
Yeah, so they would sit at the hotel that they kicked Jacksonville out of their hotel.
Jacksonville out of the hotel, which I'm just kind of like,
petty. I like it. I like petty. I'm a petty guy.
Yeah, it's gamesmanship. So like, whatever. It's it's like, hey, we're the home team. That's our place. We're not going to stay at the Comfort Inn of London. For you, man. Like, stay where where we're supposed to stay. So I get that, but like. If you've been there and you've adjusted to the time and everything, like, cool. But I know who I'm, if Jacksonville's playing this week, I know who I'm betting against. I mean, they're not in London anymore. Like, yeah, okay. They've been kicking it there for 2 weeks. I'm going to maybe, I don't really bet it ever, but like, I don't know, might be a juicy one to bet against Jacksonville, but it's definitely advantage. You can't say it's not advantage, but the Bills shot themselves in the foot by treating it as like a weekend treat, treat away for, hit the resort and spend a couple days and, come home with a W. Like, It ain't that easy, man.
No?
It's such the prep that goes into like having to fly over there and like, trying to get yourself on the schedule just to do it. Because if you're treating it like you're still, if you're trying to like not adjust to the time, your body's thinking it's 9:30 in the morning. Like it's probably like 8:30 by the time you start doing warm-ups. Like you don't do stuff like that all
No.
season long, maybe training camp. Like that's it. But it's a little bit, I don't know. It troubles me because like there's a ton of people in like the sports science staff that like you could talk to be like, maybe we should do a couple of days early. Like, why are we treating this like a weekend jaunt? Like it's not.
I feel like, and I know this is very Buffalo, woe is me, but it's almost like the Bills, bad shit has to happen to the Bills before the league actually changes shit and does something about it. I think back to a couple of years ago, one of the greatest playoff football games ever played, Josh Allen versus Pat Mahomes, and the Bills never touched the ball in overtime. And the rule gets changed after that game, after the fact. I'm pretty confident going forward, you will not see Jacksonville or any team get to spend 2 straight weeks in London while another team only gets 1, just because I do think it's a legitimate competitive advantage for sure.
Do you want to be that team though? Do you want to be the team that's always like, nah, the whiny, like, yeah, we got screwed, change the rules. And then people are like, all right, fine. If you got to shut up, we'll change the rules. Just
agreed. Whiny
gets around. Like,
it can come off
it's a competitive advantage, but like
I'm whining right now.
You know it. Like, but that's the thing. Like the schedule comes out in what? June, July, whatever, or the draft.
Sure. They should have went Monday.
Going into it. You know that they're already there. Like, find ways to mitigate that advantage, I guess. That's my view.
Jay Skursky earlier last week, or sometime last week, I should say, wrote a good article in the Buffalo News talking about the sports science behind their decision to come later in the week and this and that. Good article, good read, lots of good information, but they were wrong. Straight up. They should have went on Monday, and by Wednesday, maybe they're a little more acclimated. I thought that was definitely the wrong decision. So, yeah, you could blame it. I still say it's an unfair competitive advantage to Jacksonville.
It is.
That said, kind of leading to my second point, Joe, the coaching. This was a team that came out, especially in the first half, just a lack of energy and a lack of intensity until, quite frankly, it was pretty much it was too late. So they weren't ready to play this game. You could just tell. I mean, you could see. I mean, you don't have to be an expert. If you watch the game, if you got up early Sunday and you watch that game, Jacksonville just had a lot more intensity and a lot more energy than the Buffalo Bills did, especially. I mean, the Bills didn't even score until the last minute of the first half.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just not this offense. I thought the coaching was lousy. I thought Ken Dorsey was lousy. I'm looking at, and we're recording this Monday mid-afternoon. So advanced stats are starting to come in, graphs, charts, and I'm starting to look at them, and the Bills did not work the middle of the field whatsoever. Like everything, Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs, who were both very good, all their success was on the outside. The tight ends, again, just shit. This was such a big narrative going into the season, man. There's 2 tight end sets and Kincaid being a first-round rookie and Dawson Knox, blah, blah, blah. It's not working. 28 catches, 5 games this year, Joe. 28 catches for 193 yards and 1 touchdown. That's both tight ends combined right now through 5 games. That's not good. Dawson Knox is having the worst season since his rookie year. Dalton Kincaid has not been a real factor. The Bills just didn't use the middle of the field. They didn't run the ball up the middle.
No,
they kind of gave up. Now, to be fair, the offensive line sucked too. So, you get, sometimes you might argue, and this. What is it called? It's not the X's and O's. It's the Johnnies and the Joes.
Yeah,
to an extent. But man, this team didn't really look ready to play. And schematically, I don't like anything about this game. Coaching matters.
It 100% matters. And I guess the thing that gets me though is that a lot of how that game played out reminded me a little bit too much of the playoff game with Cincinnati, where it was like, I mean, granted, this is not let's make this clear, not a playoff game, not no stakes on the line. No, it's a game in England, like, okay, whatever. And it's against a team that you're favored against. You should beat them. But it's a big event game. There's more eyes on it. Obviously, it's a big deal in England. It's every Bills game's a big deal in Buffalo. Let's be real, but
sure.
But all if you're watching football on Sunday and you're like, oh, cool, we get to start watching a game at 9:30 in the morning. Great, all day football. Love this. You got a lot of people watching still, but it's you come out flat like that, and everybody's like, "This is the team that kicked the Dolphins right in the ass, like all over the place." Like, where's that team? And it's almost like it's a reverse trap game. Like they got so up for the game that they had to beat Miami, had to, wanted to flex on them, want to do all that. And they took care of business, and they're like, got that out of the way. Thank goodness. We took care of business. We're good now. Everything's square. And then you hop over to England, and Jacksonville's just waiting for you. And whoops, it's things go sideways. And there's 100 other things that happened wrong, obviously. And it's it's one of those things where listen, I get it. McDermott hates getting questioned. He hates it like nobody. Every coach hates getting questioned, period. But I mean, sometimes it's you gotta eat it, and there's a lot for McDermott to have to chew on after this one. Dorsey too, but it's not a great no loss is great, but this is one where you're just kind of left asking, like, the hell's the real team here? Who are the real Bills? Because I mean, if we want to go through the wins, Miami win's a great win. Oakland win, yeah, you had to win that one. The Washington win doesn't look quite so shiny after you see the friggin' Bears put 40 on them. So it's like, well, maybe Washington stinks too. So it's a constant reassessment that like you got to do, but I don't know, man. I just remember a few years ago, the Bills seemed to be the team that loved reading their own headlines and getting a high off of that and being like, we're the best. Nobody's going to beat us. And then somebody hits them in the mouth. They're like, hey, wait a minute. We're the best. No, you can't be the best. And it's this kind of reaction where it's like, but we just put 40 on Miami. What the hell, man? I thought we were good. And no, everybody's coming for you when you're one of the best.
It's been the problem now for a couple of years. They're a front running team that just gets out and puts the foot on the gas and curb stomps teams they're supposed to beat, and then teams that physically match them, they just tend to struggle with. This happened with Jacksonville a couple of years ago. Now, this is a good Jacksonville team, whereas a couple of years ago, Jacksonville sucked, which made that a lot uglier. And look, I don't even care about the loss as a fan. I truly don't. And I'm also making up excuses. I already talked about the travel, and I'm not going to sit here and say that the injuries didn't matter, because they definitely matter. DaQuan Jones, third play of the game. DaQuan Jones, who to me, and I've made this argument last week with Aaron Quinn, he could be your defensive MVP after the first 4 games. That's what I said. Yep. Third play of the game, he makes a stop. He stopped the first down, forced a punt. Probably, as we're taping this, it's not official, but it looks like he might have torn his pec, which is obviously not good. Then the second drive, Matt Milano is done for the season.
Yep.
Probably their most irreplaceable player besides Josh Allen on this football team, quite frankly. Maybe you can make an argument for Stephon Diggs, but that's it. And they lose both their guys on the first 2 defensive series of the game. And then the week before, they lose Tre White for the season. That is derailing. That is season altering. 3-2. If you would have told, if we had this conversation 5 weeks ago, I said, yeah, the Bills are going to be 3-2. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. Okay. But
you'd probably be unhappy about it. You'd be like, okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't be happy.
It's the playoffs, it'll be fine. Like, whatever.
Yeah. Like when you got Tre White, Matt Milano, DaQuan Jones, I feel good about the team, and they're going to rally around. They'll be just fine. But those are not replaceable guys. Again, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Matt Milano, Tre White, maybe Deion Dawkins because he plays left tackle and the Bills are thin there. Those are your 5 most irreplaceable players on the team. And you just lost 2 of them already for the season. And DaQuan Jones is ranked pretty high. He's certainly in the top 7 or 8. And he's awesome. Probably, he might be gone too. So this is season derailing. It's devastating. And I don't think I'm speaking too much, I don't think I'm exaggerating too much when I say the Bills' realistic Super Bowl chances as they stand right now today are almost gone. I think they're almost gone. Brandon Beane could do some stuff. They can make some trades. Don't even start on Kyle Elam, by the way, who had to start because Christian Benford, another big injury, didn't play on Sunday. And Kyle Elam just got flat out exposed. 8 targets, 6 catches allowed for like 93 yards or some shit like that. Anyway, this team's in a world of trouble. Brandon Beane, I know it sounds like very Madden video game like. He's got to make a couple trades. He's got to find a corner, and he better find a linebacker, because Tyrell Dodson looked pretty good on Sunday, but he ain't it, man. You're not beating Joe Burrow. You're not beating Pat Mahomes with guys like Kyle Elam and guys like Dorian Williams or Tyrell Dodson in your starting lineup. You're just not. It's not going to happen.
Here's the thing that's going to get me though is they're playing the Giants next, right? Sunday night game. Giants are awful.
And they're next
they're
3
going to pound
games.
the Giants into the turf, and everybody's going to be like, no worries, we got it, we're all set. And then
they play the Patriots on the road.
The cart down the road, and then it's like, yeah, well, you play the Patriots next, who are in shambles. So
and then Tampa at home. So their next 3 games are chumpy teams, man. Yeah. Well, Tampa's not a chump team, but they're close to a chump team.
Any of their wins are kind of fake, but it's. You can write things now, and that's the schedule. You got to take care of it. Like beat them up, do whatever, but do it knowing that you have big problems and you've got some serious things to address. Because if Daniel Jones starts carving you up, or Baker Mayfield starts to pick you apart, or like any of these, or God help you if Mac Jones gets his head on straight against the Bills, Jesus, like people are going to lose their goddamn minds around here about it.
They're not losing to the Giants. I'm not going to spend half a second.
They shouldn't lose any of 3 of those. They're not. Be hard, but like they can't. You're not losing the Giants. You're not losing the Patriots. I don't care about Belichick. Whatever. Just you're not doing it.
I can't get over losing Matt Milano for the season. It is. He is literally he's one of the best 3 linebackers I think in the NFL.
Yeah,
he's an All-Pro. I mean, that's not you or I saying it. That's the league saying it. He was a first-team All-Pro last year. You know what I mean? It's it's hard, man. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but you don't come back from those type of injuries. Not when you lose your number 1 corner who was playing good. I know a lot of people pointing to last year saying they did last year without Tre White too, and they went 13-3. I get it, man. I do. But then you lose Milano too, and you lose DaQuan Jones. And God, Greg Rizzo might be out for multiple weeks with the foot injury. There's just the shit is just adding up, and it sucks because the first 3 weeks, the Bills had really good injury fortune. Then Jordan Poyer misses the Miami game. Then Rizzo and Benford miss this game. Now Milano is done. DaQuan Jones is done. Tre White, or might be done. Tre White is done. It's just a lot. Let me do something. I want to get your reaction from this. It's about a 2-minute or so clip. It's from yesterday's show. My guest, my friend Tone Bucks, who is if you think me or Nate Gary is an overreactor, a knee-jerk reactor, and a hothead, you got to hear this take.
Okay.
I want to get your thoughts on it. First, he's talking about Kyrie Elam after that. Not even what he did during the game, but more so after the game. Maybe a tiny bit controversial. I don't think so. I'm playing it regardless. And then he has a take about the season. He thinks Tone Bucks thinks the Bills Super Bowl season is over. He already thinks it's over after week 5. He does. Let me play the video, and then I want to come back and get your reaction from it. Here it is.
What a disaster of a day.
Yeah.
A disaster of a day.
It was a disaster of the day all around. A disaster in this city.
Can I complain about his postseason or his post-game comments?
Oh,
Kyrie Elam's.
Go ahead.
Well, it's just, he said, and I understand he's probably hurting, man. All right. And I don't poke fun at people's faith. All right. I may not be a man of faith, but you know what I mean? But don't invoke God after you just played a shitty football game, okay? I mean, God has a plan for you because you just fucking let up 10 receptions for 120 yards. You know who I need to have a fucking plan for, Kyrie Elam? It's not God. It's Brandon Beane, okay? I'm sorry. That just rubbed me the wrong way. Again, I don't poke fun at anybody's faith, all right? I understand. But don't, I had no use for his post-game comments. Just own up to playing a shitty fucking football game already.
So before we go, I'm going to give you one opportunity to either further cement what you've been saying a lot during this podcast, or maybe walk it back to some extent anyway. And knowing you like I have for well over half your life, you are very, as am I. I think you're a knee-jerk reactor, a bit of a hothead at times. So I sit here and ask you on this podcast, you confidently can sit here and say today that you genuinely feel like the Bills' Super Bowl, legitimate, realistic Super Bowl aspirations came to an end with this loss today.
Yeah, I'm not walking that back.
No?
No chance.
Not there, man. I'm not there because I believe that Brandon Beane's going to do something. That I will say that's the only thing, because I don't think Matt Milano's replaceable, just like Tre White's not. I need to get to the trade deadline. They're playing 3 chump teams, and I'm pretty sure the trade deadline will be coming up by then too.
Can I reserve the right though to jump back on the bandwagon if I want? No, I mean, because nothing. Oh, I mean, you want to talk about getting underneath my skin? It's the people out there that are like, well, if you don't stay with them now, all right, when they don't go jumping back on the bandwagon when they're this or that. Like, I'll jump back on the fucking bandwagon whenever I want. Okay, that's what a childhood of investing in a washed-up Vince Ferragamo, Matt Kofler, and Joe fucking Dufek affords you. Okay, I can jump on and off the bandwagon whenever I feel like it. But right now I'm off. They ain't winning shit.
That's a pretty poignant comments there. You feel kind of feel that way?
I agree with him 100% on the last point. Like, you put that much time in, you can come as you go as you please.
Kind of gives you a little Detroit
fan. That's man. I was like, come talk to me when you win games. Then we'll have a serious discussion. That was my relationship with the Lions. If it was a Facebook relationship, it's complicated for years and years. So
I kind of wanted to. Part of the reason why I wanted to play that for you is I know you being a Lions fan who have suffered for so many years that you might get a kick out of that and appreciate that. And I do think that's going to be a lot of Bills fans. Plus him talking, kind of reminding me of you sometimes, like when we kind of not necessarily, well, we're poking a little bit of fun anyway at some fans. Right. The way they talk, you got to change the tone of your voice when you're imitating how a fan would talk. So anyway, that just completely reminded me of something I could see you saying. But anyway, let's take
you know what the I will say about the God rant, it reminded me of Stevie Johnson back in the day. Just he had a bad game and he's like, I don't know what God would do this to my hands like that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm with you, man. I hear you. Like, it was taking it in a different direction, but it was like, okay, I got you.
All right, I'm back here with Joe Yerdon. All right, man. So it's time to talk Sabres here. It's an exciting, a lot of fans, I should say, are very excited about this team. The team is very excited about themselves, as they should be. Let's actually start with a little bit of Monday news here as we record this. Been talking about it for a long time. Rasmus Dahlin, it's a done deal now. 8 years, $88 million. He's tied to the Buffalo Sabres through 2031-32 season, which will put him at 32 years old, I think. 32 years old. So you're getting all of the Rasmus Dahlin prime here.
The whole career, man.
You're getting it all here, man. And he is second. He will be the second highest paid defenseman, I think, in the NHL. I read behind Carlson. Anyway, your thoughts on that? Not a surprise, obviously. You've been talking about this shit for months and months and months.
Yep.
And now that it's done, the week of the season, just your general thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. I'm happy it's done. So we don't, I think we got so caught up with doing all the training camp stuff that we kind of forgot that the first 4 days of camp were like, what the hell's a contract? Like, you guys said, like, we've been waiting since July for this.
Sure. Yeah.
So, we kind of parked it and forgot about it. Then, promptly 8:00 Monday morning, there's the alert, 8 years, $88 million. I'm like, yeah, no, that's the exact contract. I think everybody was waiting for it to happen. Listen, there are some other hockey stat heads that are gonna get on me. By the way, this picture that if you're listening to this in the podcast, watch the YouTube, because I think Rasmus is answering my question to him in this picture. I'm not sure, but it's the face is cracking me up. There are some hockey heads that are just like, don't pay guys this much, which okay, fine, whatever. But like, the cap's going up. It's going up. It's going to be going up over the next few years. And, Kevin Adams kind of joked about it, saying like, well, agents think it's going to go up a lot higher and faster than we think, but it's going up. And the issue is, and it makes me flash back to when PK Subban was negotiating with Montreal years ago. And they had a bit of a difficult negotiation going on. He was an RFA and he was playing really well, and you're just kind of like, just pay the guy, just get it done, get a long-term deal done, just get it over with. And Montreal took the position of like, well, he still has to prove himself. And then he went out and won the Norris Trophy that season. And it came back to him the next summer like, okay, so about that contract, they're like, fine, here's what you're asking for. So you didn't want to get into that kind of situation because Dahlin's already on every voter's radar to begin with. He was on it pretty heavily last season. Team kind of got in trouble. He got a little banged up. So like the play came back to earth a little bit, but you didn't want to be in the spot to negotiate with them, then have the cap go up by like, $4 million. And then you're like, Rasmus goes, oh, that's convenient. Cause now now what I want is going up by like $2 million a year. So you don't want to get into a spot where like suddenly you're offering them, what the Leafs gave Austin Matthews, different position, whatever, fine. But like, you didn't want to get into that 12, 13, $14 million stratosphere and like really blow the market up. 11 million for top defenseman. Yeah, it's a lot. It's the biggest contract in Sabres history. It beats out Jack's deal from his 8-year, $80 million contract. But are you arguing about it? Like this is what the cost of doing business is. He's the number one defenseman. He's freaking great. He leads that room by example. They love him in that room. Like guys, guys are just are not in awe because they're all professional players. Nobody gets in awe, but even like, we spoke with Matthias Samuelsson after practice today or on Monday, and he says he's like, the guy just takes care of business. Whether he's dangling all 5 guys on the ice or he's putting somebody through the end boards, like. Guy just does everything. He does everything and he does it great. So I don't disagree with that. He's incredible. It's just there are so many great defensemen in the NHL that you can get lost in the woods being like, well, he's not like Cale Makar, he's not like Miro Heiskanen, he's not like this, he's not like Erik Karlsson. Like you can do that all day with all these defensemen, but they all are freaking great. And that Dahlin was doing like Makar type stuff last year. Everybody was like, oh yeah, no, he was supposed to be this good to begin with. Just he had to go travel through the woods, get lost in the woods in the Ralph Kruger woods there for a couple of years and came out on the other side looking like the guy that they thought they drafted at 18. And that's where he is now. So it's everything. Everybody wins.
I could see if, like, maybe let's just use an example. Let's just say maybe somebody like Casey Middlestat down the road a little bit. Let's just, for the sake of discussion, let's pretend he gets a good deal, a big deal. And maybe some fans will love it. And some fans will be like, I don't think he's worth this money. He had other guys to worry about, blah, 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 this and that. I can understand that. But with Rasmus Dahlin, it's like, if you're complaining about this deal and this contract, like, what are we doing here? What are you doing as a Sabres fan? And this is something that you're complaining about. If anybody earned and deserves that type of contract that's ever played for this franchise right now, it's Rasmus Dahlin, man. I haven't heard, now, to be fair, too. I haven't really heard anybody bitching about it. I'm just saying, if you are, then I don't even know what you're doing following this team, I guess, at this point. Other news item, kind of sort of news, even not just something, or it's something that I think we've expected with Zach Benson. Kevin Adams pretty much said on Monday that your boy's made the team and he's going to start the season off.
He's here
in Buffalo. Yeah, he's made this team. He's going to be here. Again, not a surprise. If you listen to this podcast, we talked about a lot. People, of course, follow you or Lance or Rachel. This is not, like I said, this is not something that really should surprise anybody.
Right.
I did notice, though. So for most of camp in the preseason, he skated with Tage and with Skinner. I quote tweeted you on Monday.
We got talking about this last week, and then Don blew it all up right before the Pittsburgh game. He's like, here's all these new lines. Enjoy. We're like,
why do you, so for people who haven't followed over the last game and practice on Monday, he's got the old line back with Tage, Skinner, and Tuck, and now he's got Benson skating with Middlestat and Greenway. I guess my question is, and he's looked good no matter who he's played with, I guess, Benson. You would know far better than me, but that surprised you that he kind of moved those lines? I don't know how I feel about him skating with Middlestat and Greenway as opposed to, in part because you've talked about how well Tuck played with Cousins previously. So what do you think of what Granato's doing with these lines? And this is just a couple of days before the season starts, though.
Yeah. It was, it's funny because I think we had asked Don about lines and whatnot, and it came up about, he just happened, like, off the cuff, mentioned how, like, Skinner Thompson and Tuck is just, he's, I think he said something along paraphrasing here, but like, that's the easy group to put together because it works. You know how they play with how they play alongside each other. You get it. Like, what works and it works really well. So
sure,
you don't need to break that one out in preseason because it's just kind of, it's kind of dumb. And it got me thinking back to last year when all the talk was like, well, we gotta look at some of these other groups. We got to figure this out, and you had Peterka and Quinn coming in as rookies. So you're just like, well, how's this gonna, how are these guys gonna fit in there? Had all that kind of discussion going on, and they played with some combinations. And then I think it was the same deal right before the last preseason game. He put them back together again. It was like, well, they're going to be together for the next like half season basically. And sure enough, that's what happened. And then the same thing happens again this year. And I should have been like, you know what? Should have realized this was gonna happen because that group is too good. Like they're one of the best lines in the NHL. You don't just kind of break them up haphazardly and on a whim. Putting Benson with Greenway and Middlestat is really interesting though, because it's and we haven't gotten to look at it too much. We saw the Pittsburgh game. I almost want to throw the whole Pittsburgh game out. The last preseason game because it was just such a whatever game. But Benson did not look out of place. He was still doing a lot of the same stuff that he was doing, playing alongside Thompson and Skinner. And that was more of a, for me, that was more like a let's see how Casey handles this. Let's see how Greenway handles playing with with somebody who plays that kind of way. And I'm going to be really interested to see how the matchups work. That's provided, let's knock on wood here, provided that these lines stay together when they face the Rangers on Thursday night. I imagine they will, but who knows? We've already seen things get shaken up once before, so who knows? But the way Granato talked about Benson today about, how good he is with the stick and how effective he can be in, taking the puck away from guys and, how he just adjusts so well to whoever he's playing with and he makes them play, makes those groups, he plays the same way and they play better together. So, it's going to be very interesting to watch him. And listen, he's made the team. If he struggles, they won't hesitate to send him back to junior. Like that's, I want people to know. He gets
9 games, right? Is that what it is? 9 games
up
before
to 9 games before the contract is it kicks in for the year. Because if they send him back before that, the first year of the contract slides to next year. That's funky, first year early or entry level contract rules with the NHL, where if a guy comes up out of junior hockey or wherever, first year, like if he comes in and he doesn't, if they're like, doesn't look ready yet, send him back, then they don't have to worry. Like that doesn't kick in. It's mostly for like, years of service working and, how soon that next contract gets signed, all that stuff. Like teams that play with that. It's like some of the bullshit you've seen in baseball with guys where it's like, oh, this guy's going to be in the majors. Like, no, we want to make sure he's with this team until he's 45 before he becomes a free agent.
Right.
It's a little like that with this, but, some fans might remember the nonsense they did with Mikhail Grigorenko trying to make sure his contract didn't activate, and they're trying to send him on conditioning stints, and he wasn't injured, and just nonsense. But I mean, this is going to be a really interesting test because this early part of the schedule is kind of mean. It's kind of mean, a
lot of home games early though.
There are, which is good. But I mean, you open up the Rangers, then you're going down to Long Island to play the Islanders. It'll be their season opener. Somehow they don't start their season until friggin' Saturday, which is nuts. But then you're playing Tampa, you're playing Calgary, you're playing the Islanders again. There's another.
They play Montreal at home. I know that early
Montreal.
on.
So yeah, I mean, there's
Calgary.
There's some interesting matchups. So yeah, so it's good. You're going to get a good idea of what he's about, especially a game against Tampa and the Islanders play hard. They play annoying. So it's, a couple of games with those guys is going to tell you a lot about like where he is discipline wise. And discipline's a fun word to use with him because he took a couple of penalties like during the preseason. I think it was the game down in Pittsburgh where it turned into a little bit of messy situation with the PK or whatever. But I want to see, how he's able to adjust to like full-time NHL speed against NHL players as opposed to a mishmash of AHL, NHL guys.
Let me, and by the way, before I ask you that question, I misspoke. I'm an idiot. I mentioned him playing with Cousins is actually Middlestat that he looked good playing with, not Cousins. Cousins was playing with Quinn and Peterka, of course, last year, and that line was a lot of fun. More on that line in just a second, too, by the way.
Mhm.
But anyway, so obviously Benson is the best story of camp. The biggest surprise. You see a scenario where like Savoy's on the team, but he's going to start on IR. First of all, let me ask you this. Do you have any idea of physically, like how far off he may be from being able to play? Like, let's just say the Sabres, for whatever reason, again, it's just pure speculation, but the Sabres want to use him in their lineup. Like, how far away is he from being able to play in an NHL game? Or let's even say an AHL game. And I know I know that's a whole mess.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Right. But like, how far off is he? I know he's starting to skate with the team. You have any clue at this point how close he is to being able to play?
We should probably have asked coaches and Adams about that just to get an idea of like what kind of timetable they're working on with that, because he just came back to practice late last week. So we don't know the extent. He did mention it was a shoulder injury, so we know that much. We don't know what the extent of that was or like what the deal was. So there's not really an idea of like how to spitball, how far along or not he is. He skated the whole time that he had it. Like, he was doing all like the skating drills and everything. So like legs are in shape and everything. And he didn't miss any workouts or any of that stuff. Like, he was doing all the right things. So that's good.
Sure.
But, as far as like return to game action, tough to say. I would probably pin it like sometime within the next 2 weeks, just to be absolutely safe. But usually in a lot of situations when the guy's not a rookie, he's like a veteran guy, but once they get back to practice, it's usually within a week or so when they're ready to go for game action. But he got no preseason games, and going from playing in development camp to playing in the 2 games of the Prospects Challenge to NHL games that's a big step up. Now they could send him for conditioning. And he did have a legit injury, so like they could send him down for a couple weeks for conditioning. I don't see the league having a problem with that. I tried to read through the legalese and the CBA to see if there was anything, funky with guys in their first year contracts to do that or, whatever. But it's basically up to the league to say like, yeah, I know the guy was hurt, like send him back. He made your team, so whatever, he's good. But there are some decisions to come up here. Like if Benson shows flat out like he's here to stay all season long, that could take away an option for Savoy, just because that's the easy move is like, well, he doesn't look ready. Send him back, slide Savoy into that spot, see how he does. And then you're just kind of pushing that decision with him and whether or not you want to get into a fight with the CHL and the and the NHL about like, should he actually be should he go to Rochester? Can he go to Rochester? Or do you just send him back to the WHL and forget about him until April? But it's that I think that's a fight they don't want to get the answer to just yet. They want to see where he's at and see what kind of options they can play with him still.
Let me ask you a couple more questions here regarding the Sabres. Obviously, again, Benson, the fun story, the highlight of the preseason and training camp for sure. And obviously, the Sabres season's about to start. There's a lot of optimism, not just in Buffalo, around the league. A lot of people are pretty high on the Sabres as a team to watch out for. That's fine and dandy, but this is not a team without concerns, that's for sure. One of them, I want to get your opinion on the defensive combinations that you've seen through camp in the preseason. Again, I don't follow the team to any extent towards like how you cover this team, but like for an example, Connor Clifton, I hear a lot of good things about him, but I haven't seen a lot of good things from him, at least with my own maybe semi uneducated eyes. Through the preseason, he's going to start the season, I believe, with Dahlin. How are you feeling about these combinations right now? You just look at me like, oh, maybe he's not. Is he not?
They ran out some new pairs on Monday morning.
Speak to me.
So they reunited Dahlin with Samuelsson, which was their top pair for 95%.
Okay.
Of whenever Samuelsson was in the lineup, he was probably with Dahlin. So they put those two back together again. Power stayed with Yoki Harju. And then you had Eric Johnson with Connor Clifton on the third pair, with Jacob Bryson just kind of cycling his way in because Bryson's made the team, something a lot of fans on Twitter were not very happy about when I put that out there. So, whatever to that. I thought Bryson's played well, so whatever. But Johnson and Clifton, I think they both may have gotten maybe 2 preseason games. And Clifton, I don't think Clifton came in until like the last 2. in that
Okay.
second week. I don't think he played any in the first week. I think the same goes for Johnson. They're both veteran players. Johnson, obviously, much more of a veteran than Clifton. But they kind of needed to get used to like how to do things with new partners. And Clifton with Dahlin was just kind of, I don't know, it was a little messy in the 2 games they played together. So you don't want to start the season off with a couple of guys where you're like, oh boy, let's keep our eyes on this and then adjust on the fly. I think you want to be ready for it. Now, will these pairings stay together? Until Thursday, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But
feels like yes.
It feels like yes. But I think it's going to be their way to kind of ease Johnson and ease Clifton into how they're doing things and how things go, because your top 2 pairs are going to play the most minutes period anyways. But I think they want to kind of get these guys more into a feel and get an idea of like how things play out in front of them before really kind of tinkering with things and messing around with stuff, because the way it looked in preseason wasn't looking very hot in general. I'll be very honest, but it was a little bit of a change today. So I'm going to be a little curious to maybe, today was a little bit too busy to be picking brains about pairings and whatever. And besides, maybe they run out a whole new set on Tuesday morning and then it's like, well, forget it. So, but it was a little bit interesting to see like the 2 new guys on a pair together. And what's extra funny is that I was joking today that a lot of our defensive stories just got all blown up today because of this, because we're remarking about how it was lefty shot with a righty shot on each pair. It was like, oh, okay, nice. And then you had lefty Dahlin with lefty Samuelson, and then righty Johnson with righty Clifton on the third pair. We're like, you know what? Just forget it. Let's just never write anything ever again. We'll just whatever, eat Arby's. It's like that kind of thing.
You talked about that on the show last week. Actually, I remember talking about lefty righty pairings. I don't know. I just know that Dahlin and Samuelson looked pretty good together last year.
Yeah.
So I'm good with that. Another guy, Olofsson. I mean, God, it sounds like a broken record having to talk about this guy, but he's set for a prominent role on this team for now anyway. I mean, he's skating on a line with Cousins and Peterka. He's your Jack Quinn fill-in, essentially. I don't know. I don't even know why, because I feel like I've asked you the same question like a million times with Olofsson. I don't love it. I don't love it. I don't see how he's going to change and what's going to be different about him than what we've seen. This is where I'm like, well, maybe if Savoy gets better and Olofsson's just not it, man. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they figure out something. I don't like that line. I'm going to throw that out there, man. I love that line. I don't like Olofsson on that line. So let me rephrase that a little bit.
I think you're one of about 98% of Sabres fans that say the same thing. They're just like, and it's all because of Olofsson. It's not Cousins. It's not Peterka. It's Olofsson that drives the fans crazy because, for whatever reasons, it's just, they're over him. And I get it. Like, this is probably going to be his last. I would bet anything. It's probably going to be his last season in Buffalo. If he's here for the full season, I would be kind of surprised. I was even saying this last year that, maybe they just trade him, with the deadline because they know they're not going to be, they're not going to re-sign him in a year or whatever. But, and even over the summer, I think we were just kind of like waiting for that trade to happen. And then that never happened. I think mostly because of Quinn getting injured. That's what kind of put the brakes on that. But I think, again, preseason is there needs to be a better preseason pledge that I like. Jerry White's great with the preseason pledge for the NFL. I need to come up with a better one than it's preseason for everybody in the NHL, because your lying eyes can tell you a lot of stories in the NHL preseason, because you can think like, oh man, this guy's going to be really good this year. And then the second the games count and that you're getting the full NHL lineups, disappear, gone. Like it's like, the preseason never happened. Olofsson for me has played a better version of his game. Now, the Columbus game, the last Columbus game, the one in Ohio, it had one of a classic last season Olofsson shift in it, whereas kind of mishandled the puck, and then suddenly they're hemmed in their zone for the next minute and a half, and stuff happens, and it's like, well, that's not great. But I've seen a guy who's a little bit more committed to playing as a line with his guys, being better on the forecheck, doing all like the little things that they've asked him to do better. And I think he's done that. But again, it's preseason. He got a lot of games, so they got a lot of looks at him to understand like where he's at and how things are going to go. And this line with him with Cousins and Peterka has been together basically all camp.
Yeah,
this is what they're running with. This is what they they want to get that right. And for me, Peterka's poised for a big season. I think Cousins is going to have another step forward with how good he's been. But it's Olofsson that's going to be. A lot of that kind of hinges on him, playing together, their whole buzzword from a few years ago, play connected. He's got to be connected with those guys and helping them out. And if he doesn't, that line's going to struggle. Like it's without a doubt, they're going to struggle because Cousins and Peterka can forecheck pretty well. Peterka, you got to keep him a little bit on the rails a little bit, but I mean, Cousins is just a dog out there, man. He's awesome. He's so good. But if Victor's not, Victor's like squeezing the stick and trying to force goals to happen and, not keeping it together, they're going to have a hard time. And then you're going to be looking at it and going like, okay, well, how do you fix this? Where do you go from here? And well, I mean, you have guys in the minors, you have, as long as Savoy's around, I guess you could plug him into there, but you're kind of running short on options and guys to kind of play with that. Then you're talking about putting maybe Middlestat on that line or, just getting whoever, Benson, I don't know. Like you're asking a lot of other guys if Victor doesn't have it together. So he's got to have it together. It's a contract year for him. So he's got to want it. I
feel like Victor Olofsson is poised to be in the press box. And I feel like Tyson Jost is poised to get into this lineup because he's going to start the season as a 13th forward. Mm-hmm. It seems, right? I mean, you go through these line combinations. And for now, and again, things change quickly in the NHL. Yep. I get it. But for now, Joe seems to be. Is Joe capable of playing on that line and just switching those two out? Or if Joe has to come in and there's not an injury involved, let's say you're going to pull Olofsson off for whatever reason, does it become a lot of line juggling because of that?
I don't think they want to do a ton of line juggling. I think Jost is the guy that would slot in there. But it gives them somebody who plays the game a little bit more on the rails, like a little less freelance, a little less, worried about trying to score, a ton of goals. He is a lot more mindful defensively, forecheck wise and all that stuff. So that's good. But you're going to lose a little bit of offense, but I mean, if they're in a spot where Victor's kind of a net negative offensive, apart from like the goals here and there or on the power play, at that point you might be looking at it where you start digging into the fancy stats. And then if you see Jost is really, able to hold it together while Olofsson is kind of bringing everybody down, then, you're just like, whatever, like we might not get the goals, but we're going to get more from the other two guys if this guy's out there with them instead.
Well, get well soon, DaQuan, I guess. And I'd like to see Savoy get a crack at some point, but again, it's fun to watch the young players play, but I really don't give a shit if it's a young player or a veteran. I'm looking for guys who are going to help this team win now because I'm tired of looking into the futures, and I want that. I'm kind of locked in on the present. We've talked about it before, by the way. Potential opening if Olofsson's not working out. Number 88. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't want to say his name. There's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's like Beetlejuice. You say it 3 times, he's suddenly on your roster, and you're like, oh no, what do we do?
So Devin Levi, he gave up 7 goals on last Friday. Whatever. Scale 1 to 10, that's a 0, right? In terms of concern, that means 0, correct?
Yeah, it's like what I mentioned before about how that game played out. It was 20 guys that were the gym class all-stars for a night that decided they were going to try really hard against a team that was just kind of like, hey man, don't get hurt.
Right. I get it.
Like they got in the offensive zone and then they were like, hey, let's try to score some goals. And then the DN, it was just like, yeah, whatever, man. We're not going to fight tooth and nail with these guys unless, it's Peyton Krebs fighting Sidney Crosby because
I saw that. Yeah. Good for him, man. Good for Peyton. But all right, so on Monday, last thing here too, Kevin Adams, he spoke to you guys and girls in the media, but I didn't hear the press. I saw a couple of highlights on Twitter. They're keeping 3 goalies for now. That's obvious. They already sent Stillman and Byro down, who, by the way, both cleared waivers, and Clay too. So they all cleared waivers. Maybe a mild surprise that they all cleared waivers. Let me ask you that. Is it a little bit of a surprise, at least not like a significant one, but a little bit of a surprise that they all cleared?
It's a little bit. I mean, we just had a huge waiver day on Sunday, and I think 4 guys got claimed Monday afternoon. Like that stuff just happened before we got really going with the party.
Right.
But only 4 guys got claimed, and one of them was a guy who got waived earlier in the preseason. So his old team grabbed him back because the team that picked him up before was like, we don't want you. So the other team was like, whatever, you're coming with us, and you're going to our minor league team. You can get away with a lot in the preseason on waivers just because everybody's trying to figure out their friggin' roster.
Sure.
And so many teams are pressed up against the cap that, unless somebody on waivers that they've scouted at some point during the preseason, which, the scouts are still doing work, unless they see that guy and he's like, well, this guy's way better than what we got. If they waive him, grab him. But teams are so busy with what they've got on, under their own roof that they're, unless it's something where, maybe a GM or somebody knew a guy from before where it's like, I know this guy will play better than what we've got. Get him. But it's not a huge surprise. It's so much of the salary stuff, and then just teams just jockeying their own roster and figuring that out.
Right. All right. Well, my question, I guess, was if Kevin Adams spoke about keeping 3 goalies for now. And then my question for you is, this is going to be short-lived, I would think, because don't you think it's important if Devin Levi's your number 1 and he is your number 1 going into the season, whoever that number 2 is going to be, whether it's UPL or whether it's Comrie, and let's say Devin plays 6.5 to 7 out of 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you want your number 2 having some sort of groove where he's playing at least semi-regularly? Because if you're keeping 3 guys and you're going, based on matchup, what is Comrie going to play once every 11, 12 games, or UPL play once every 11, 12 games, if Devin plays 5 or 6, and then your backup's playing the next one, and that guy's out of the rotation? Like, how are you going to get it a groove if you're going to keep 3 goalies if you're playing once every 8 to 12 games? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard, and it's really hard in the rotations in practice too, because there's still only 2 nets in practice, and your number 1 guy's going to have a net to himself most times unless he needs a break. But the other 2 guys are going to be splitting reps in practice, and then you're talking about those 2 guys fighting over maybe 3 or 4 starts out of every 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's really hard. We saw it last season, man. None of the granted, there were other factors, Anderson with the, needing the rest and all that stuff. That was a big factor, but it might end up playing out the same because you want Devin to play games. You want him to play more games than the other guys, obviously, but you got to get in a groove too. And it's a rookie, like Levi's still a rookie. Like if there's going to be bumps in the road, there's going to be struggles, there's going to be some games that are like that, like that Pittsburgh game. Granted, it's a little more troubling when it's, the actual NHL team putting in the full NHL effort. But we saw that the game in Detroit last season was kind of a mess. Team played kind of sloppy in front of him. Game went to a shootout. Now Levi made about 9 or 10 unbelievable saves in that game. Still gave up, 5, 6 goals, whatever it was. And, you're going to have those games if the defense doesn't lock it down in front of you. And that's, it's the full team effort type thing, but you want your backup to be able to play like 30 games, 30, 35 games, maybe. And if you got 2 guys splitting it for all, for the whole season, it's not ideal because then those guys are splitting 30 or 35 games and then they're only playing 15, 16 games. And you're kind of playing a little Russian roulette with it on the back, when they're coming in to play a game, because they're not coming in hot. That's for sure. They're coming in cold after, having watched the last 2 games. So, I mean, Adams talked about it a little bit today. I don't know if Don did a little bit. It was more of an Adams question because you're keeping 3 goalies. And I think, based on preseason, I mean, Comrie's the number 2, but I think if they had full trust in either of those guys, or that Devin was going to be able to play like 65 games, you'd say like, whatever, we can live with it. Because even like, like a guy like Igor Shesterkin with the Rangers, so good, but like if you force a guy like that to play a ton of games, it's going to wear on him. Like it's, you're going to run into it. Vasilevsky had it happen with him too. He played 60, 65 games, and then in the playoffs, the first few games stank, and you're like, Jesus, okay. It's their top guy. Top guy's got to be fresh and ready, and that's the spot they're in because you need Levi to be ready, but also like he's got to be dealing with it. Like it's a rookie finding his way. Now he's got the mental makeup to do it, but still you got to do it. And there's a reason why teams carry 2 goalies all the time. And it's because it's just easier to manage the rotations and whatnot. Like that's that. There's also, it can't be coincidence. There are like 4 or 5 teams that are keeping 3 goalies on the roster to start the year. 3 of them are in the Atlantic Division. Why? Tampa Bay just lost their number 1 guy for the next 2 months with back surgery. You're going to hand out a free goalie to the team in your division?
Right.
No, you're not going to put a guy that because they're thinking we only need a guy that's got to be able to kind of carry the weight for us for a couple months until the other guy gets back. Are you going to hand him a freebie to kind of maybe beat your face in for 2 months while you're trying to get points on them? No shot, man. No shot. And you're not going to hand out a free Comrie if you're Detroit. You're not going to hand out who is it? It's Caden Primo in Montreal or Alex Lyon in Detroit. Like you're just not handing these guys out. You're just not going to give Tampa Bay a freebie because you can't get your roster figured out. Like you're just not doing it. So it's a little bit of that action, but I think regardless of whether Tampa needed a guy or not, Buffalo was keeping 3 guys. It's just nothing got settled and they haven't forced it to be settled. So that's just where they are.
Well, I don't have a preference on who the number 2 is going to be. I will trust Granato and Adams to make that decision, and whether it's Comrie or whether it's UPL, whoever it is, I hope they can make a trade for somebody. The only thing I could say why I would understand keeping 3 is they got a rookie goaltender who played a little bit last year, but he basically still coming straight from college, and now he's going to be a rookie number 1 goalie in the league. If something happens to him physically, if for whatever reason he just becomes a disaster, which I don't see happening, but just saying, then I guess it would make a point to have 3 goalies. Let's wrap up because this is a Sabres preview episode. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I'm not going to make it easy either. Listen, good. I could ask you the ceiling, and you'd tell me the ceiling is the Sabres can make the playoffs. For sure. Here's the question. Not can the Sabres make the playoffs? And I might save this clip for next March or April or whatever for both of us.
Okay.
Will the Sabres make the playoffs? Not can they. I know they can. And it's very easily that they don't too. And the drought would continue. But I'm putting prediction time on you now. Is this team going to make the playoffs? Am I going to be getting you on for a guest spot while the Buffalo Sabres are in the playoffs? I probably wouldn't be able to because you'd be too busy. But let's just hypothetically pretend that they are. Are the Sabres making the playoffs? That's my question for you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I believe they are. This team's been trending up for 2 years, and these guys are another year experienced than another year.
I think I just lost. I think Joe just got frozen up on me. Anyway, that's how we're going to end this podcast. I'm kind of laughing because the screen is frozen here with Joe. But anyway, I think Joe says yes, the Sabres are going to make the playoffs. I'm a homer, man, so I'm gonna have to agree with him. But anyway, I thank you very much for joining this episode. And by the way, thanks, of course, to Joe Yerdon. Got frozen up there at the very end, but he did get a yes in, so I'll be able to hold him to that. Tomorrow I'll be on. I'm breaking down the Bills game film and the PFF grades. I'll analyze those, and that'll be tomorrow's show. So talk to you then. Take care.